Giants Among the Iroquois with Kyle Delisle. You're listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 attention cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And yeah, we got a great...
ran through the gamut of voices there.
That's right.
Tangent cube of science. Nestled on the ancient seabed.
Yeah, I'm working on my voice acting. You know, got these audiobooks going, man. Gotta work on this. So yeah, we got a good show for you guys this week. We were joined by, how do you say his name? Kyle Delisle?
Kyle Delisle.
Delisle, that's right. So he's a Native American from Canada, and he's been researching their legends about giants and cataclysms, and so we have a long conversation with him about that, and it was a lot of fun. So look forward to that.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've been really meaning to get into. We looked into the Native American legends online, just kind of reading around, but yeah, it's kind of hard to weed through it, and he just has done a great job, and he's been meeting with the elders and the knowledge keepers,
yeah,
and specifically, you know, paying attention to certain things, taking notes. So he's really doing the groundwork here, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
he was on the Scablands trip with us, so we hit it off, and actually he taught me how to hike up a mountain without destroying my legs.
Oh,
up and down. Remember that?
Yeah,
the locking the knees, because he was in the military. He was in the
he was at Marines.
Marines.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told us what it was during the show. You'll hear it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'd hiked many mountains in Afghanistan. And, when we were going up to, Steamboat Rock.
Yeah.
He was just telling me, just lock your knees every step. You're going up an incline. And the steeper it is, the shorter the step you take. And you lock your knee. So while your knee is locked, your bone structure is supporting all of your weight while you lift the other leg to put it to the next spot, not your muscles.
Oh.
And then the same thing when you're going down, and it makes you kind of walk funny.
Yeah.
But dude, that was when I had to go early.
Right.
I had to go take people back early in one of the vans.
Yep.
I got all the way up to the top of Steamboat Rock and back down in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And my legs were not hurting.
Wow.
At all. It was amazing.
Yep.
It changed my life. But anyway, that was a side note.
Good advice all around.
Good advice all around. Yeah. Side note.
Yep.
But we hit it off, and we were texting, and we had talked about giants a little bit. I asked him, if he had anything in the Native American legends, and he just said, yeah, I've found a whole bunch of stuff. So I was like, dude, you should come on the show.
Yeah.
And he was all about it. So
yeah,
good stuff coming up.
That's right. So what about agriculturally? We're about to start bottling.
That's right. We're, this is going to be...
about to get busy.
It's about to get busy these next 4 days, and possibly working over the weekend. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we have to bottle, and we have to blend, and we don't have a tank big enough, so we got to blend in 2 tanks, and we have to go through a oxidative process of pumping over between 2 tanks to get it blended homogeneously between the 2 tanks. And so I spoke with my instructor from Texas Tech, and she has a dissolved oxygen meter, which is a very expensive piece of equipment. But she'll be bringing it, and that way we can actually test the wine as we're doing the blend to see how much oxygen is being dissolved into the wine.
Yeah.
I'm going to Vintner's Vault. I'm buying a sparging stone. We're going to have our bottles of gases there, and so we can run the gas into the sparging stone and swirl it around and sparge the gas through the wine to pick up the oxygen and bring it back out if we start seeing the oxygen levels spiking. So we're going to be monitoring that closely while we do the blend. And then once we get it, I think we'll probably be pumping it between the two tanks for probably like 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And this is kind of some advice I was given by some other winemakers. Yeah, just pump it for 45 minutes. And Maureen said, you taste one wine out of one tank and taste it out of the other one. And if you can't tell the difference, you're good.
Yeah.
And that was really good advice. Like, oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we got to do that. We got all the glass in, we got the corks in. So we're going to be getting all the bottling set up, all the equipment set up on Monday. Got to run some errands, pick up some things, get that whole process going. So hopefully we'll be actually doing the bottling on Friday because I want to knock it all out in one day.
Yeah. Okay.
Blending tomorrow, and then let the blend sit and integrate for a couple of days.
Yep. So why are we going to wax the ceiling? Like, what's all the ceiling wax for?
We're going to dip the bottles in wax instead of putting what we have done before is the foil. And the foil is a high end, there's plastic, shrink wrap, basically like it's like in electrical, you have what do they call it? Heat shrink.
Yeah.
So there's a plastic material you can buy to put over the neck of the bottle after you cork it and you heat it up with a heat gun or whatever, and it shrinks and tightens up around the bottle. Probably the cheapest way to do it. The next way is the foil. It's actual kind of a thick foil that's made in the mold that looks like sort of the shape of the neck of the bottle. You put it on there and you put it in a spinner, and the spinner crushes the foil down over it equally.
Very evenly, yeah.
Very evenly. And then wax is your next thing. And the thing about wax is it's just labor intensive. You got to have the wax heated.
Yeah.
It's got to be at 300 degrees or something, and you got to dip the bottle in there. First, you got to put a little tab around you take a butter knife and take a little bit of wax out and paste it onto where the cork is and the rim of the bottle to make sure there's no air bubbles. And you let that cool.
That's going to be fun.
Then you dip the neck of the bottle in the wax. But the cool thing about that is when you open the bottle, you just put the corkscrew right through the wax and just go, and then you open it, it just breaks the wax seal.
Yeah.
And it's elegant, right? It looks really nice.
It's elegant. Yeah. And then right after that, we'll probably be doing harvest.
That's right.
That's why we're bottling now, because harvest is coming up. The weather here has been really great this year so far for agriculture, for the vines especially. We've had like the awesomely perfect amount of rain.
Even a little too much, but not too much. It's just
but it comes in small amounts, which is what like normally in the Texas Hill Country at least, we get rain and it's just too much all at once. And then everything floods, and then all the rain goes away, and then you don't get rain for months after that, and it's just in a drought. But this time it's been once a week or 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we get a little rainstorm. And so,
it's just keeping everything a little moist.
Yeah.
Which is good for growth and then bad for fungus. So, but we haven't had any outbreaks in the vineyard. So that's been good for us.
Yeah. Yep. So harvest is coming up pretty soon here. So we got to get this stuff bottled. And what about Dynasty? You guys were down here working on this weekend.
Yeah, we recorded GMA.
Yeah.
In the over at Smithsonic Studios with the upright bass or the double bass, and so he was using the bow. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, cool.
We normally will kind of over there, since we're not here where we can spend a lot of time. We just do a bunch of recording. And you're making mistakes, know there's problems, but you're like, well, I think we've got enough. We captured enough to where we can go and edit and find all the good things and keep those and get rid of the bad things. And so that's what we did. We came home and worked till 4 a.m.
Yeah.
I think Ty released a few videos on.
Yeah, I saw him on Twitter. Yeah.
When we were quite a number of beers in. And, but yeah, it went well. And it sounds awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
All right.
Well, we're getting her done.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do space weather news from spaceweather.com. Geomagnetic forecast. Today, Earth's magnetic field is quiet. It should stay that way until July 28th, when a narrow stream of solar wind arrives. This gaseous material is flowing from a sinuous hole in the sun's atmosphere and could trigger minor, which would be KP equals 4, geomagnetic unrest. So that's it for the space weather news there. Current conditions, solar wind speed is 328.6 kilometers per second. Density is 10.5 protons per cubic centimeter. 24 sunspots right now. And neutron count is 8.2% above the space age average. And the KP index is quiet for both now and the 24-hour max. It is 1. So there you go. The space weather news update.
Thank you, buddy.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm pushing the news stories off till next time.
Yep.
We're gonna.
What about the crypto?
Oh yeah, crypto. Forgot about that. Let's see. Crypto. Bitcoin is at $37,290.38, and Ethereum is $2,230.97. So it's going up.
Yeah.
It's going up, folks.
All right, let's do a few emails here before we get into the main interview. This one is called Hello Snake Bros from Jim. He says, hello, boys. Far northern Snake Bro here. I rarely send emails like this, but I had to make an exception for you guys. I finally got your podcast to work with my phone a couple of months ago, and I've been catching up on the episodes that I can episodes that I can ever since. I am currently in the Gods of Eden episodes. I go back occasionally and cherry pick episodes prior to where I was able to start, which is somewhere in the 60s, I think. Hopefully, I'll have the time one day to listen to all of them. Your episodes on breakaway civilization and secret expeditions of Francis Burton are personal favorites.
Oh, yeah.
I've been interested in topics like what you cover for years and have all the usual suspects for podcasts, but your patented blend of seriousness mixed with side-splitting banter has firmly placed you guys high on my list, so keep up the good work. I have also appreciated the lack of politics, and, at least as far as I have listened so far, the lack of bringing up the current situation, except an occasional passing comment. This has made your podcast a welcomed sanctuary from the constant doom and end of the days episodes that are coming from most other podcasts right now.
Wow.
I found Library of the Serpent the other day and thoroughly rated the PDF downloads for future reading, as there was many books in there that I have eyed for years, but I had not purchased. And he says, I just wanted to give you a heads up that Apple Podcasts, at least on mine and the other people's phones that I tested it, will not let us download your show. But I switched apps and had zero issues. This is suspicious, he says.
Yeah, so Apple Podcasts revamped their system, and it's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
But I did notice on my own, because I had heard this, I checked it on my own phone. I think I may have deleted the feed altogether and then searched it again and then resubscribed, and then it worked. But I haven't checked it since then. And then more recently, somebody complained about the problem. I told them to do it, and it didn't work on their phone. So I don't know. I need to check mine, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Well, we did it with Daniel, and it did work. That did work for him to unsubscribe, and then when he resubscribed, he was able. Or maybe
no, because he downloaded Overcast. So I recommend Overcast.
Yeah, Overcast for you iPhone
which
users.
is great. And then also the one really cool thing about Overcast is you can share. Like there's a share button on the screen that's showing you the playback, and you can hit share, and then it pops up a little menu, and you can share the entire episode as a link. Or you can share a clip, which Overcast will pop up a little editor, and you can edit up to, I think, about 2 minutes of the podcast around the area that you're listening to, and take some pertinent piece of the audio and actually share it via text message or whatever, and it'll pop up as a little play window in somebody's text messaging, and they can just hit play and listen to that clip. It's really cool.
Yeah, and people are using that in the Discord now to make episode clips.
Oh, good. Yeah,
so
I haven't checked in a while.
There's episode clips channel in the Discord, and people are using that feature or screen recording on the phone.
Yeah.
Which is what I do.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Overcast. It's a good one.
Yeah. Podcast Addict is another good one for if you're on Android.
And if you like Podcast 2.0 and you want to send us some Bitcoin.
Yeah, there you go.
We need to open that up.
Yeah, we need to I need to make sure we're Podcast 2.0 compatible. Yeah.
That's right.
All right, this is another one. This is from Sean. Says, huge fan. It's real short. It says, what an honor to work with Randall. I listened to your podcast also. One question. Is that a Pitbull hollow body guitar hanging in the background? And if it is, please give me your input. Thank you, and I pray for a plentiful harvest.
Well, yes, it is an honor to work with Randall.
Yep.
And yeah, man. Appreciate that.
You gonna tell him what the guitar is?
Nope. It's a super secret guitar.
Okay. All right, this is from Henry, old Hablack. Oh, it's a long one, so this might be the last one. This is super long. He says, hey all, hope you guys are doing well, and I hope you had a blast at the Contact at the Cabin. All the photos looked amazing. Really wish I could have made it this year, but hopefully we'll meet up sooner than later. I have been extremely busy lately, so it has been really hard to keep up with work and research, let alone correspondences. But also wanted to say that I saw you guys got the books I sent. Thanks for the shout out as always, and I'm glad you liked them. Yeah, he sent us those books with all of his artwork in there, and
Yeah, they're awesome.
yeah, they're beautiful. And he references our podcast in the intro to the book, which is really cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for that,
Thank you
Henry.
for doing
Yeah,
that, buddy.
I mean, we have your artwork hanging all over our studio, so
Oh yeah, I love it.
yeah.
I love the bull symbolism.
Yes.
That's my favorite stuff. But,
Yeah.
the dolmens are pretty cool too.
They
I
are.
have to
That's
admit.
right. And the long head skulls.
Yeah, I got a long head skull over here with the candles. And
Yeah.
that one's awesome.
He says, I feel bad I didn't send anything for Laura or the Watcher, though. So if you guys give me their t-shirt sizes, I can send something out for them. And yours, too, if you want some more swag. Hell yeah. Well, I'll do that. I'll reply to this months later. This was sent in April. Sorry about that. Okay. He says, anyway, I wanted to check in with you guys and was wondering if you would discuss a theory I've had for a little while now on the mythical ages of man. So, I know how you guys, and me too, like to attribute specific heroes as groups of people. And I think that this is an extremely valid and popular way to interpret this stuff. So I was wondering if anyone had heard about the myth of Saturn being a sort of stand-in for the Neolithic Revolution. The god of the previous age would have been Uranus, the heavens, and could be attributed to the human tribes that first learned to catalog the constellations. So we could be talking over 10,000 years for that age. Then you get the Younger Dryas, and plant and animal domestication become necessary for survival. So Saturn, often represented by the sickle, agriculture, becomes the new head god, along with his consort Rhea, the stand-in for the matriarchal culture that was believed to have existed in prehistoric Europe and the Middle East at that time. Eventually, you get to the Greeks, whose earliest myths seem to be the recalling the change from this Saturn/Rhea culture to the Zeus-worshipping Indo-European horse nomads. Hence all the raping and slaying of nymphs and such. That's just a reconfiguring of the hierarchy, with the new myth serving as propaganda and justifying the new ruler's authority. The myth of Marduk is an excellent example of this. There are a few good books that get into this last part of this transition, from a more matriarchal/egalitarian society to a more patriarchal and war-dominated one, including all the work of Marija Gimbutas, The Chalice and the Blade, Our History and Our Future by Rianne Eisler. The English poet Robert Graves also goes into the archaeology of this stuff in his version of the Greek myths. The Battle of the Titans, the Gigantomachy, the Alioids, I don't know how to say any of these words, Henry, all seem to encode some sort of ancient religious war between these cultures. And before Kyle thinks I'm giving a too rosy view of the past before the rise of the Zeus culture.
It was so beautiful.
all
the flowers were blooming and the bees were buzzing. It was wonderful times. The grass was so much greener than it is today. No, I'm just
He says, I don't think we were all hippy-dippy crystal huggers back then.
crystal huggers.
Plenty of prehistoric evidence for warfare and violence. These things were probably conducted in a much different way before the rise of the horse lords, something more akin to M. Night Shyamalan. That's how he says, I don't know how to spell it, and I'm on a roll, so I'm not stopping to look. The village for control purposes, which might be Saturn eating his own children. You're basically holding back the level of technology in your culture on purpose because you know the problems the expanded population will bring. Tower of Babel. So in theory, you have a culture that is somewhat equal, but where individuality is suppressed in favor of maintaining the status quo. Once those horse nomads started coming around, it's pretty much a new technology that is just going to decimate surrounding cultures who haven't caught up yet. It's like having tanks when everybody else literally just has pointy sticks. Add bronze to that equation and you have your new man. You have your man as God ready for apotheosis. Brings a whole new meaning to the term shining ones, doesn't it? The shining ones, the watchers, etc. used to be the stars, but now have been appropriated by man and obscured and personified. I'm sure these horse warriors have a priest class, so these guys are slowly spreading the sun cult while they are conquering. It's why you have the same Indo-European myth themes from India to Britain. Places like Egypt hold on better because the culture is older, so you can hold out on those new ideas longer. But eventually you don't even have Egyptians ruling there anymore, Hyksos, rulers, etc., and the same thing happens. So by the time you get to Rome, you're basically set up for synthesizing all this stuff into one belief system. Hello, the Catholic Church. Another idea I had in conjunction with this, what if when a myth says that when God created man out of clay, he was talking about teaching them to make pottery? There are myths about man being made from stone, Neolithic construction, dolmens. What if these myths are the gods, more advanced humans, longheads, advanced hominids, star communication, or whatever, teaching us early Homo sapiens how to make things, and the material we create with is the thing that makes us man?
Wow, that would jive with Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and how he's seeking immortality, and yet he dies, but of course his immortality is preserved in the building of the city,
yes, right.
in the stone.
It's in the
that's a really cool analogy.
Yeah.
Man is made of clay because when we look at ancient man, we find their pottery.
Yeah.
Man is made of stone. We find their architecture.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
And it's like the Ozymandias thing, right?
Yeah.
Look upon my works, ye mighty.
And despair. And all across the lone and level sands stretch far, far away.
Yeah. So he says, anyway, that's my rant. Would love to hear you guys discuss this. How these stories all spread and the mingling of these ancient cultures is so fascinating to me. Always love hearing your guys' takes on things. And snakes, which is definitely a symbol for the ancient priest class. Thanks as always, guys. And keep being awesome, from Henry.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's a great rant. And yeah, I don't know so much about the Saturn Rhea transition to the Zeus thing, but it is interesting, that the Greeks do include that stuff in the Titans, their stories of the Titans, which were the precursor gods to their later pantheon of Olympians, which were the Zeus gods. And they, it's like and of course each successive, and there were ones before that as well. So it's like each successive group of gods has to defeat or slay or imprison somehow the ones before them. And in some cases, they're kind of immortal, so they can't kill them. So they put them in these weird situations where they're underground, or they're trapped, or they're chained to a mountain, or something like that. Or they're chained to a rock, and birds are constantly eating their innards.
This also sounds
eternity.
like the death of a civilization.
Yeah,
right?
It does. Right, buried. Yep.
Yeah.
Chained to a mountain. Put beneath the mountain. Yeah. So I agree that all that stuff sounded interesting. And yeah, it's like, I feel like this is how we should look at these stories. This is a useful way to look at these stories. It may not be true, but it's still like, what are the stories trying to tell us? And this is a big part of what happens in this podcast, in the interview that we do later on here with Kyle. Like, what, you're saying, what are these stories trying to tell us? How many are true things mixed into this and given in the form of a myth or a parable?
Yeah.
And does that make them less true? No, I don't think so. It doesn't. You just have to know, you just have to understand how to pull out, like, okay, this is historical, this part is moral, but then the entire thing is given in a parable way, so that the story is carried on, but it carries those moral parts and the historical parts with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other aspect is you can't get completely married to whatever version you think it might mean.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have to be able to look at all.
We've had to learn. It's like in the beginning you're like, it was aliens. Right. Well, maybe it wasn't aliens. And now after hanging out with Marty, I'm like, maybe it was aliens.
Yeah. Now it could still have been aliens.
What is going on? And the aliens might not be physical beings.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah, it's like a constantly developing story in my own mind, always utilizing these eyes, right? Taking another look after learning something new, and see how that applies. And I love this stuff that we go through in the interview, because it's Kyle is doing the same thing. He's studying with Matheson. He's studied Randall Carlson's work, Graham Hancock, and he's going through his own, the legends of his own people, and just kind of looking at all of them again, because they were taught these things as children, and then taking another look, it's like, oh, it leads you in a new direction because you see something that makes a connection.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of validity to that. That's actually one of my favorite things to do, really, is to look at the ancient myths and compare them with this type of understanding that's come from science.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and then of course the comparative mythology is comparing them to the other legends, because it may not be clear when you're looking at one myth by itself.
Yeah.
The symbolism, but it may have very similar ties to another myth that you've already made that connection with, right?
Yeah,
like there's
that's right.
some, and that's where it gets more interesting to look at all these different cultures and what they've left behind.
Yeah, and see the connections across them and just wonder, like,
Yeah.
did they all have a common origin? Is that common origin a much more ancient civilization, or is it something that they all saw globally because it was a global event? Is it but both of those, yes, all of those things. This is part of the reason why we started this podcast, was to explore these exact questions. So, yeah. Thanks for the email, Henry. And yes, we want more swag. So I'll get back to you and get t-shirts and stuff. And so let's go now to the interview with Kyle. Hope you guys enjoy this. We certainly did. So here we go.
The guitars are peerless. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. And we have Kyle Delisle here with us. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
All right, thank you. And so yeah, he joined us on the Scablands trip, and we actually, of course, met on Zoom conferences leading up to that Scablands trip
prior.
We had a great time hanging out.
And I think his first contribution was to Cosmographia about
Lac Saint Jean, right?
Lac Saint Jean.
Lac Saint Jean. There we go. That's it.
Yeah, it's Lake Saint Jean. Yeah. Come on, let's be real here.
All right, I'll go with it. It's your podcast.
Yeah, so that resulted in a whole, pretty much a whole show of Randall talking about that. So that was cool. And then, Kyle joined us in the Scablands and is going to be there again this September. So yeah, we had a great time hanging out with him. And so you're from one of the First Nations, right? Let's talk about your background, who you are, and how you got interested in some of this stuff.
Okay, yeah. So I'm actually I'm a Mohawk Indian. Well, that's what most people know us as Mohawks. We call ourselves Ganegahaga, which means people of the Flint, because the area where we lived is a lot of Flint there. And so I live on the Mohawk territory of Ganawage, which is just on the south shore of Montreal on the St. Lawrence River. And so I've lived pretty much my whole life here on the reservation. Well, it's a reservation. We prefer to call it territory. And so I really got interested in this about 2.5 years ago when I was actually on stress leave from work. At the time, I was the CEO of our Economic Development Commission. And I was just on YouTube and I saw a little thumbnail, something that says Joe Rogan has his mind blown about Canada, something about Canada. So I was like, okay, I'm click on it, and it was Randall Carlson. It was the first time I ever saw him, and from episode 606. And after that, I ended up watching every single video I could find on Randall Carlson.
Yeah.
And then after that, on his Geocosmic Rex site. And then I noticed he's always talking about Graham Hancock. So then I looked up Graham Hancock, ended up reading Fingerprints of the Gods and Magicians of the Gods in America Before. Actually got to meet Graham Hancock briefly on his book tour. He was here in Montreal, and I went to go see it. His presentation, and got him to sign my book and everything, and got my picture taken with him. And then from there, it's just, dragged me further down the rabbit hole. Found Uncharted X and started watching Ben on that.
Yeah.
And then finally, you guys started Cosmographia and dragged me further down the rabbit hole, and here we are now. So.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic path to the esoteric stuff.
That is a good path. That's right.
That's great. So yeah, we were texting after the Scablands trip, and we just started talking about, or I guess I asked you about giants in your legends.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what we're going to do today is a deep dive into the possibility of giants and some of the history of the oral traditions and creation stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're not careful, we may actually talk about turtles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how that podcast, turtles all the way down, and you don't even talk about turtles. So after 2 hours, I'm just like, really?
Yeah, where are the turtles? I was told there were going to be turtles, yeah.
I don't want to hear something about turtles. Nary a word about it.
Yeah, some of the early shows, I was more humorous in the naming and the descriptions. Now I'm a lot more serious.
Yeah, thanks for the trolling. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely trolling everybody with the names. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I figured we can start off on just, what is the Iroquois Confederacy, which the Mohawks are part of. So I don't know, actually, if you want to start off, I don't know what you guys know about the Iroquois Confederacy. So
Tell us everything you know, bro.
Yeah, let's hear
we don't know.
Okay, well, basically the Iroquois Confederacy was originally made up of five nations. So we're 5 different tribes. So from west to east, we have the Seneca, then the Cayuga, then the Onondaga, then the Oneida, and then the Mohawks. Originally, we were located or settled, I should say, around the Finger Lakes region, which is why the Finger Lakes are named after all the tribes. And so several hundred years ago, we were warring against each other a lot and with everybody else. And they started the Confederacy. It was started by it's called the Great Peacemaker. Taganawita was his name. And the sources say he was a Huron. Some say he was an Onondaga that was adopted by the Mohawk. There's lots of stories out there on who he really was. And so he was trying to bring peace to the 5 nations. And he wasn't a very good orator, so he got Hiawatha. So Hiawatha was an Onondaga, and he helped him. So he was the one who would go to the different nations. They first got the Mohawks to join, and then all the other nations except the Onondaga, and the Onondaga are right in the center. And they had an evil sorcerer named Taadaho, who was in charge of the Onondaga, and they knew that unless they could convince him, they wouldn't have they wouldn't be able to convince the Onondagas to join. So eventually long story, but eventually they convinced him. And this Taadaho, he was disfigured, and he had snakes in his hair, and everything, and stuff like that. So they basically combed the snakes out of his hair and straightened his body. And then they had the Great Tree of Peace, and they toppled the tree over, and there was a big hole underneath the tree where water flowing. They threw all their weapons of war in there. They stood the tree up, and there's an eagle on top of the tree, and that looks out for danger for the 5 nations. So actually, the name Iroquois, I've heard lots of things. It's either an Algonquin or possibly a Huron, or even a French word for us. We call ourselves the Haudenosaunee, which means people of the Longhouse, as there's a long house over all 5 nations. And in 1714, the Tuscaroras, who were originally in the Carolinas, they end up joining the Confederacy. So we became the 6 nations. So you have to think of it as the Confederacy. It's basically the North American version of NATO. Because like I said, we each had our own separate languages, traditions, culture, whatever. So we're separate, but we would go to war. We would only go to war with each other. Not against each other, as a group of 5 nations. If anyone was attacked, all of us would attack that nation. So in general, that's how the Iroquois Confederacy began. And as I live in Kahnawake, and we're right on the south shore of Montreal, right on the St. Lawrence Seaway, right by the Lachine Rapids, which is why Kahnawake actually means on the rapids, because we're right there.
Yeah.
That's why they had to build the St. Lawrence Seaway, and that goes right through our territory. So we lost our connection with the river because of that. So it's a very contentious issue within the community about that. But the Kahnawake was originally established in around the 1680s by the Jesuits to convert the Indians in the area to Christianity. And eventually, over time, it became a Mohawk reservation, essentially. And we were most famous during the 20th century of ironworking. So our men would go all across the United States and Canada ironworking. That pretty much built up our economy. Like I said, my father was an iron worker. My grandfather was an iron worker. My great grandfather was an iron worker. So it was pretty much that's what really built the community. And our first big accident was I think it was 1903, but the Quebec Bridge in Quebec City collapsed, and we lost 35 men in that when that collapsed. So that was a really big traumatic issue that happened to the community. If you lose 35 people from a very small community to begin with, in one day, and we also became known because a lot of our men, women too, would join the military, usually the U.S. military. So we have, I think there's something like 50 people from Kahnawake joined the U.S. military and fought in Vietnam. And a lot of other people, we have a Canadian Legion here on the reserve. And most Canadian Legions, it's broken down your membership. So do you have an affiliate who's never served, and then you have an associate, and then finally you have a senior branch. So senior branch are the ones that actually served in the military. And on average, most Canadian Legions have around 3 or 4 senior branch members. Our Legion has 130.
Whoa. Wow.
We're a small community, around 6,000 people on reserve.
And you also served in the U.S. military, correct?
Yeah, I did 6 years active duty in the Marine Corps, and then I did 5 years in the New York Army National Guard. So,
thank you for your service.
Yeah. Not bad. Well, I served when I was in the Marines, I was in Desert Storm. The war was already over by the time we got there. The fighting was already over. We were just there in case it went hot again. But actually, on my way there, we had just did an operation in Iwo Jima, and we were heading down to our first port of call, which was going to be Hong Kong. And just before we got there, Mount Pinatubo erupted. So we had to go down we got called, and we pulled into Subic Bay the day after Mount Pinatubo erupted. And we had to evacuate. And I think it's considered one of the largest evacuations that we did. But I got to see the ashes, the Mount Pinatubo in the distance and everything else like that.
Wow.
And so that was interesting. And then we ended up going to the Persian Gulf after that.
So what was the full, what was the full extent of the Confederacy when it was at its largest? Farthest south to farthest north?
It was pretty much around upstate New York. is where we were, but we had a lot of influence because we would write, there's records of us doing raids as far south as the Carolinas on the Cherokees. So, and I read somewhere as well that one of the big influences on all the other tribes in North America really happened because we were one of the first ones to meet the French and the British as they came into North America with the settlers. So we were one of the first ones to get firearms. And once we got that, we pushed everybody basically westwards from there. So some tribes, I think could be wrong on this one, but I believe it's the Apaches, are normally associated with the desert, but they weren't originally there. They got pushed there by the Iroquois, from pushing all the other tribes westward.
Okay. Yeah, like a domino effect.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then there was a split. Like I said before, we would only go to war if all 5 tribes agreed to. But there was a split in the Confederacy from the American Revolution. So part of the Confederacy supported the British, and some supported the Americans, and some just wanted to stay out of it.
Yeah.
So that was a split in the Confederacy. It was caused by, I believe, Joseph Brant, which non-natives kind of see him as a hero, but amongst the Haudenosaunee, he's seen as a traitor because he broke the Confederacy. And actually, in recognition for all the territory that we lost because of during the American Revolution, it was the British set up a reserve called Six Nations, which is outside of Brantford, Ontario, for all those people. So now, while are all Six Nations there, it's predominantly Mohawk. And so the main reserves in Canada for Mohawks is Six Nations, Akwesasne, and Kahnawake. And those 3 are the 3 most populous reservations in Canada. But we have some smaller ones like Kanesatake and Wata and Tandanaga as well. So.
All right. So how did you get the interest in the creation stories, the stories of giants? These are very old legends, right? Like, what would you call them? Are they're traditions? Is that a better word?
Yeah, I think they're traditions. Well, I first got into it because, like I said, for the creation story, most people have the creation story wrong, or not in great detail. Even like I said myself, what we learned on schools on the reservation, and I've asked my wife and my stepdaughter, have they heard these versions, and they haven't. We've just heard the simplistic version, which is Sky Woman falls, water, the turtle's there. She put her on the turtle, and the turtle grows and becomes Turtle Island. That's a very simplistic story. So, but even then, I was thinking about it, and then once again with watching Randall Carlson stuff and Graham Hancock, I was like, well, this kind of sounds like the cataclysm, in that the earth is nothing but water, and then the turtles land, and then to me, like, it's getting bigger and bigger as the floodwater subsiding.
Yeah,
right.
That's cool.
So, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And Turtle Island is like a very old name for the Americas. That's hard to say.
Yes and no. I think the mainstream view is that, but I think it's much more, goes more in depth than that.
Okay.
Especially when we talk about the turtles, and we can get to that. But so what I did was, once watching all the Randall's things and knowing, okay, like I wanted to see if there's anything in our legends about meteorites or comets or anything else like that, which would kind of back up what people were saying. So I went to the cultural center here in Kahnawake, where we have a pretty big library, and it's pretty much all just Native American stuff in there, and books. And I was talking to the main guy there. His name is Tommy Deere, and I was telling him, hey, do we have anything like with broom stars or witches or whatever? And I told him what I was doing. And he actually said, yeah, do you know, we have one version of a creation story where Sky Woman is escorted by a dragon.
Oh.
So, which I said, no, I didn't even know we had dragons in our myths. I've never heard of it, and talking to other people about this, like from Ganawage, most people have never heard of that.
Yeah.
That version. And so right there, then I started going through all the stories and trying to find out what other legends there were there. Now I guess we have to go back a bit because we have to. I guess what I learned by doing that and reading some of the books is realizing, okay, knowing that where we are now was under ice, so we obviously didn't come from here.
Yeah.
We had to have come from somewhere else. So where did we come from? And then I found in our legends that we came from the southwest. So we were somewhere in the Four Corner region is where we were originally from. And then there was a linguist who was working here in Ganawage for a few years, and he actually said that the Mohawk, at least, because like I said, we all have separate languages, he thinks the Mohawks came from Guatemala because linguistically we're very similar to the Mayans. So there's a potential we came from Guatemala, and we joined up with them in the southwest with the other Iroquois tribes. And then from there, according to our legends, we went to we were tired of living in the desert because it was hard to get water and everything else like that. So growing agriculture. So we moved eastward, and it says we moved to the banks of the great river that splits the continent. So obviously the Mississippi. And then we went up the Mississippi, and then apparently it split somewhere into two rivers, and we went there, and we stayed in, what's the name of it, Cahokia?
Cahokia, that's in Illinois.
Yeah, we stayed there for a while. According to our version of the story, I think Scriptards would actually say had a population of 10,000. Our legends say no, it had a population of 75,000. So it was a much bigger city than it's being given credit for. Then we left there. We came around to where the Finger Lakes are, but we continued to go further north. And then as we went further north, we found it was too cold for agriculture. We came back down and finally settled in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York.
And so that whole trip where they, where their ancestors were meeting people, I'm presuming there were other groups of people they were meeting on that long. I mean, how long did that take, do you think? I mean, is there any indication? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean, from Guatemala all the way to the Finger Lakes is a long way to walk.
Yeah.
But is the suggestion that Cahokia was built at that time, or was it already a city?
It was already a city.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just read the legend last week, and it said the city was already there.
Oh,
basically.
okay. Yeah.
So I think there was, maybe I'm not sure if this is correct. Maybe the watcher can look it up, but there was a study done, I think, using lake sediments in that area where it was populated, and then there was nobody, and then hundreds of years later it was repopulated again.
Oh.
Or something like that. I kind of remember something like that, which would be interesting. Way to back up the story.
Yeah, and then that's why if you look at our creation story, there's animals in there that we wouldn't know, like panthers and monkeys. So we wouldn't know what that is, and but if we were in Central America, we would know what those are.
Yeah, all right.
So that's how I'm kind of picking up on certain things. Another instance, like I said, where the dragon escorts Sky Woman down, is that he actually only escorts her halfway down. So, I was puzzling over that for a while, and then I thought about it. Well, maybe they don't mean vertically. Maybe they mean horizontally. And if you look at the work that Antonio Zamora did, on the creation of the Carolina Bays.
Yep.
How the travel of the meteorite or the comet came down, created Saginaw Bay.
Yep.
So I'm thinking, well, did he escort her halfway and she continued to fall to southwest?
Right. Okay.
Maybe. So.
Or like even a bolide, right? It didn't actually.
Yeah, it explodes in the air. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where she's dropped off.
Yeah, that too. I was thinking that too. So, so that's what I'm saying. Knowing now that we're where we really were and how old this creation story is, which is kind of, talking about first of all, the creation story. I have 4 versions that I'm working with two Onondaga, one Seneca, and one Mohawk version. And in the oldest one I have is probably they think from around 1710. So that's known as the John Arthur Gibson version.
That's when it was written down or told? Is that the...
Yeah, that was told. The lady I'm working with, Trina Stacy, she actually speaks fluent Mohawk and Onondaga. So she translated it with the elders from Onondaga into Mohawk and then from Mohawk into English. So like I said, it's a fairly long creation story. It's like on a PDF, it's 64 pages long.
Oh, right.
And the first, I said, most people know that the creation story is just Sky Woman falling. There's a whole long story before that. And the other Onondaga version I have, which is 17 pages, she falls only halfway through the story. And I think in the 64-page one, I think there's about 10 or 12 pages before she actually falls.
Oh, okay.
So there's this sky world, and which causes a lot of similarities, I think, with some of the older mythologies from different cultures, in that there's these man beings, they're called male man beings and female man beings. And they're basically akin to like demigods, basically. And they don't know death. So it's implying that they're living very long lives, like possibly thousands of years, perhaps. But yeah, because the uncle of who becomes Sky Woman, he's the first one to die. And he's trying to explain to them, I'm going to die, and they don't know what he's talking about. And then he dies, and all people start crying, and they don't know what's happening because they've never cried before. They've never been any sorrow or anything else like that.
Yeah.
And, so she has to, then eventually Sky Woman, well, we call her Yojijitsu is her name, which means blossom flower. And so she eventually goes and she marries the chief, and he's the chief of the guardian of the standing tree. And basically he's having a dreams, and he having everybody come to interpret them. And eventually he has his dream interpreted, and he has to, basically he knocks the tree over. And that's what she falls through, is that part.
She falls through the hole from where the tree was knocked over? That's the... Yeah.
I'm trying to find it right here. Right. Yeah, so it actually says, just then the group of men who were assembled set in motion the particulars of Rarundode's dream. That's her husband. They uprooted the standing tree, creating a hole at its base. Then there Rarundode and his wife sat eating the food which she had prepared. Rarundode revealed to his expectant wife that now surely all that exists in their world would become new again. Furthermore, he stressed that it will come about that all which will be created below will think of this place. Rarundode placed his hand at the nape of his wife's neck and thrust her into the chasm, thereby immediately taking him out of the running for Husband of the Year award. So,
oh man,
yeah. And so then the men assembled and stood back up the tree.
So they knocked the tree down.
Yeah,
she's pregnant. Is that what?
She's pregnant.
She's pregnant. He pushes her down into the hole where the tree was, and then they stand it back up.
Yeah,
and then that makes her fall from the sky onto this earth. That's the idea. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is as she plummeted through the celestial expanse, Yojijitsu saw the dragon, who took hold of her body in flight and said, "You now travel, and you are leaving from home. I shall help you as much as I can. I will help you to the extent of my power so that you could continue to live when you arrive down yonder. This is because your former husband blamed me and said I am the reason he cast you down. So I am bringing for you the necessities of life." So, when you say dragon, the Mohawk word for dragon is Gahasirine, which literally means white meteor.
Wow.
Or fireball.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's a literal translation, but that's the word we use for dragon. So
wow,
that's really cool.
Yep.
So it's
being made. And it's also, there's the serpent and the woman and the man and the I don't know. It's sort of Genesis like as well in some ways. I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in some ways as well, remember how I'm talking about the Iroquois Confederacy and the formation of it in the Great Standing Tree.
Yeah.
Again, and they put it over and throw the weapons down. So it's
Right. Yeah, there
Yeah.
are connections there.
You know, but actually, talking with actually David Matheson and I did a video together that he put on, I think, at beginning of July or end of June or something, where we talk about that. So basically, that's Ophiuchus is the tree. So
The tree is Ophiuchus?
yeah.
Okay. I was thinking the Milky Way, but yeah.
No, the Milky Way is the water underneath the tree that they
Okay.
topple over.
Yeah. So he's got
That
his
they throw
foot
the weapons
in the water.
Yeah, okay, the roots are in the water.
That's cool.
Makes sense.
And then they stand them back up. And like I said, in the Iroquois Confederacy, they have an eagle on top, which is right beside Ophiuchus.
Oh, yes.
There's a kilo.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it also, it's making me think of Chichen Itza, right? The dragon story. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid has the stair step with the dragon's mouth at the bottom, and then on the equinoxes, you can see the shadow moving down. It makes it look like the serpent coming down.
Yeah.
And then it goes back up when the sun sets.
yeah.
It's like, the mythology surrounding
That's the pyramid of Kukulkan. Is that what that is at Chichen Itza? I'm trying to remember.
I guess it's
Yeah,
Kukulkan.
don't take my word for that. Maybe Watcher can look it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that one is either. So,
Yeah. Well, that's so. I know this is probably not possible.
Kukulkan. The Temple of Kukulkan,
Temple
yeah.
of Kukulkan. Yeah. So
That's
this
the Mayan name for Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl. That's right. The feathered serpent, which is a dragon, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's interesting. Like you come if the tribe originated there. I mean that.
Yeah.
yeah, well, I think that's why, like, I was actually watching just earlier today during lunchtime. I signed up for an online course on Coursera on Indigenous Canada. And so I was watching the first few videos of that class, and they had the creation story. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's not even close to what the actual creation story is.
Oh.
And but I noticed that there are a lot of similarities. They had a Iroquois one, and then they had a Cree, and they all have the muskrat and the otter and the beaver involved and the turtle. So it's all kind of like coming from the same source almost. And as I'm guessing that those that survived, were likely in Central America or Southwest, and then they grew up from there, because actually we call them the Three Sisters. Our main food that we grow in, traditionally was corn, beans, and squash, which isn't native to this area. So it comes from Central and South America.
Ah, there you go.
So we would have brought that up with us or traded for whatever at that time. So that's why it's kind of hard to say what the story is like. How old is it? And
yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, how is there any way of trying to determine how ancient these stories are? Like, what are the origins of the stories?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hard part, because and then if you're trying to place them, like I said, even on some of the ones with the giants, it always says they're to the north.
Right.
But where are they at that time that story comes about?
Right. Yeah.
Is it where we are now? It means they came from Canada, or were we further south at the time?
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to say exactly.
Yeah. When I was reading through the notes you sent us, it always just says, a long time ago, when, things like when the earth was young, or, it's kind of like it's telling you this is a very old story, but.
Yeah, and I also got the idea that the North was, in the ice, because they were. There's something about, I guess, a few of them that kind of make it seem like sort of Yeti. Stories.
Yeah, yep. And there's the indication that the lands were blasted and just rocks, and so it's like mountainous or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's a.
Yeah, so if we're in the Southwest or talking about the mountains, are we talking about the Rockies?
The Rockies, yeah, which would have been covered in ice. Yeah.
Yeah, and once again, the Rockies are in our creation story, so it is mentioned, because once Sky Woman falls, and of course then it's not the turtle that tries to hold her up first. First, in some versions it's the muskrat, in other versions it's the beaver, some is the otter. They first try to hold up. They put the earth, the land on that creature first. And they can't hold it up. So then they get the turtle, the great turtle. And then the loons fly up and they catch her and they bring her back down onto the turtle. And then the muskrat dives down, and a couple of them try and they die. And I think it was a muskrat that was successful in getting some earth and bringing it back up to her, where she could start spreading it out around the turtle. And it started getting bigger and bigger each day. The turtle was getting larger. And then then what happened is she gave birth, so it was a virgin birth again. And her daughter ends up getting pregnant as well. But there's no mention of her actually having any type of relationship with this man. This man comes and he has scalloped edges on his clothing, and he lays 2 arrows beside her in the lodge, and he walks away. And then next day she's pregnant when he comes back for his arrows, and he leaves again, and they never see her again.
What?
Scalloped edges on his clothes. That sounds Sumerian.
That looks like Sumerian. Yeah.
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 And then what happens is she gives birth to two twins.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. One twin comes out the birthing canal. That's Tariwago. And the other twin, Shawiskata, comes out her armpit and kills her.
Whoa.
And then Shawiskata is made of pure flint.
Whoa.
In the Mohawk version. So, and that's why Shawiskata means like flint shard. But it could also mean ice shard as well.
Okay.
So he ended up killing her. And the grandmother, who's the sky woman, the one who first fell, said, which one of you killed your mother, killed my daughter? And of course, the one that did it, Shawiskata, blames the other guy.
Yeah.
And they're going back and forth. And eventually she blames Tariwayagu, and she ends up throwing him and casting him into the reeds. And basically ignores him and blames him. And she's actually surprised he didn't die when she threw him. And the story gets really complicated after a while, but he has a bow and an arrow, and he shoots it. He's shooting at a bird, and he misses it, and it goes into the water. So it's the only arrow he has, so he has to go and he jumps into the water to retrieve it. And when he jumps in, he's surprised that there's no water. He's just like he's like underwater, but there's no water around him. And he sees a lodge, and he goes to the lodge, and in the lodge is a man, and he says, "I'm your father. I give you a bow and arrow and a corn husk." Gives him some corn. And the father says, he says, "I'm your father, and he is the great turtle." The father, so this one with the scalloped edges.
Oh.
And the father of the twins is the great turtle. So that's and then the story goes on, and Tariwago is the one that, in some versions, he's the one that creates men. Other things says he just readies the earth for men. And Shawiskata is always trying to mess him up, basically. He tries to copy him. Like Tariwago starts making makes a man. And his brother tries to do the same thing, but he messes it up.
So let's go back real quick, because I'm getting the names confused. The one that got cast out by the grandmother, by the sky woman, is actually the non-flint guy, right? Is that,
yeah.
Okay, so she blames the wrong one, tosses him out. He goes into the water after losing his one arrow, meets his father. And then the flint guy is the one who's trying to copy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's trying to do all the same, create creatures as well, but he creates all the ferocious creatures. In some versions, he's actually saying, "I want to make these animals to kill the humans that you're making." So it's almost like, as I texted Kyle, it's almost like our version of Enki.
Yeah.
Enki and Enlil.
Which one is trying to make the world better for humans, and the other one's trying to make it worse. And even the grandmother doesn't want him to succeed in making the planet good for mankind. And so the bit of back and forth there. And actually, one version, he actually tries to hide the animals. Where is it? On the Gibson version. So he's talking about the animals that Shawiskata created. It says, "So these beings began to travel about. They were fierce. Some dove into the water and reemerged on the other island. Tarniwago noticed what was happening and said, I don't think that would be any good that these beings should associate with the wild animals that I have completed. And so I will make them go back across the water. So then he drove them back across the water. He followed them to the other island. When they came ashore on the other side, he drove as many of them as he saw roaming and crawling about to the mountain in which there was the cavern, the same place where the game animals were detained by Shawiskada. Tarniwago drove the ugly and fierce creatures into that same cave. He blocked the entrance with the large rock and said, I have done the same thing that my brother did. I have captured and confined the creatures that Shawiskada created. I'm curious to know what will happen when my brother realizes what I have done. I wonder if he will be able to free them. So which he doesn't. So in another version, that was the Onondaga Gibson version. And in the Mohawk version, it says, so at this time, the grandmother of Shawiskada said, what thing perhaps is happening? There's a rumbling sound. She then addressed her grandson, Shawiskadu. Before Shawiskadu could reply, she spoke again, saying, it is true, undoubtedly, that Tarniwago has found them there where you and I have the animals imprisoned. So then, let us two go out at once to the place where we can find them. Then at once the two of them went out and without delay ran there. So when they arrived there, it was as she said. Tarniwago stood there, having opened the cavern in the rock, and a line of animals ever so long was running out. The two rushed forward and took up the stone again, and again shut in those that had not come out. And there are animals great in size and now dwell underground. Sapling kept saying, do not you two again imprison them. Nevertheless, Shawiskado and his grandmother just placed over the opening other stones. So then the kinds of animals that we know are only those that came out again.
That's
So
Yeah,
extinction
now
event.
it sounds like
dinosaurs. That's what I mean. There's multiple things it sounds like, but it's like the animals in stone are these giant, ferocious looking creatures, right? These dinosaurs, they never came out and they're all in the stone.
Well, I'm thinking more because we also have myths of, which I'm trying to look more of. I've
The Ark.
read once that, of giant bison. Bison so large that they knock over trees when they walk through the forest, which I think they mean is mammoths.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah.
and they also talk about giant bears and all these giant creatures from before. So I think this might be the extinction event from the Younger Dryas.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Because these are all fierce animals, and where are they now? Where do we find them? Underground.
In the stone. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's how I read it.
Yeah, it does sound like a sort of an extinction event and also a kind of an arc story. Like they're led into the underground. She says there's a rumbling, what's happening, right? It's like there's something going on, and then they go and let some of the animals out. Those are the ones that populate the world now. The giant, fierce ones are still stuck underground.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
Well, you want to take a break?
Yeah.
All right. This is great, man. I'm enjoying it.
We'll be right back.
Yep. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast, joined by Kyle. I'm surrounded by Kyles today. Surrounded. And the Watcher is here with us. He's listening in the background and keeping us up to date on stuff that we can't remember in the chats, so that helps a lot. And we're going through traditions of the Iroquois and the Mohawks and looking at creation stories and possible connections to, the work of Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock and other people about past cataclysms, and maybe connections to other mythologies and connections to the stars. You, Kyle, mentioned the work of David Matheson. So if anybody's not familiar with David, we do have one show with him from our podcast, but you can look him up, and he's got a great YouTube channel and a blog where he talks about star myths from around the world. And so what did you say? You did a video with David about some of this stuff, making these connections?
Yeah, we did. It was about a little over 2 hour recording, because I was getting ready to, I was talking with some elders, and what they were doing was getting together a prophecy gathering. So this guy's name was Ganosuhu. And so I was talking with him, and he was telling me about this prophecy gathering that he was doing. And then I was telling him all the stuff. I had just gotten back from the scablands and telling him all the stuff, that I've known and working on with the, taking our stories and tying them to the constellations.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, a week later, I get an email from him asking me to be a presenter at this prophecy gathering. So, we had there's a Mayan, an Aztec, a Kogi from Colombia, which was interesting. I have to rewatch his. Basically, he was, if I recall, she was saying he lived in a cave for 33 years. He never saw daylight. They only brought him out at night.
Wow.
And so he's some spiritual seer or something with the Kogi, and he doesn't speak Spanish. His son had to translate for him. He only speaks his indigenous language. So he was on there, and a Pueblo and Inuit, and myself. So before as I was preparing my presentation for that, I had some questions for David on whether my connections were correct.
Yeah.
So we had a Zoom call and talked a lot about the creation story and Ophiuchus and everything else like that. And so that's online on YouTube. Actually, it's on the Discord server. It's in the Friendsodes. And
okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's online, and it's talking about the creation story. And
what's the prophecy thing? Is this prophecy for our future or about past prophecies?
Well, what the original intent, what he was, as he explained to me, is that they were trying to get all of our prophecies from all the nations, from indigenous nations in the Americas together, and then to present these to get in non-native people as well. I would think along the lines of people like Randall Carlson and guys like that.
Yeah.
To come in and look at these stories, and then they wanted to present them to the governments and heads of corporations to basically say, look, all our prophecies are talking about this time now and the stuff that's going on, and we need to change our ways, otherwise this is what our prophecies are saying is going to happen. So I mean, it was an honor to be involved in that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was the only one talking about the real issue. Everybody else was talking about climate change, anthropogenic climate change. So whether I had any impact on that or not, but it was fun to listen to. And actually, if you go to fnti.net, that's First Nations Technical Institute. So it's a school in Tyendinaga, Ontario, and it was through that school that we did this, and so it's available on their website under the Prophecy Gathering. And all 3 days, it was over 3 days that we did that. And
well, hey, at least you got your voice in there talking about impacts, comments, and
yeah, I was gonna say, was no pun intended. You don't know how much of an impact you made.
Yeah.
Possibly none.
So I wanted to go back and ask about sorcerers. So I saw this in some of the stories, that we are going to be going through about the giants, and you've already mentioned in the Confederacy formation that there was this sorcerer. What does that mean exactly? Like a powerful sorcerer.
Yeah, you see it mentioned here and there, and there's this term that we use that we have. It's called utkun. So that's like evil, magical, evil type.
Yeah.
Orenda, if you want. So I think that's what they said. It was this sorcerers are usually evil. And like witches, we also have witches as well. So the sorcerer just being a male version of that. So, I think that's all they're referring to, is that he was very, had a lot of evil. Apparently he was a rapist as well, and So he's a really, really bad guy, basically, and they had to convince him to join the Confederacy, which is why, and the ones who did it, well, it was a peacemaker, but it was also Hiawatha. So Hiawatha was the one that convinced him because of his oration to do it, which is interesting if you think of the crater that they found in Greenland.
I know, I was like, this is
called the Hiawatha. Which, if it does turn out to be from the 12,900 year old impact, it's quite a depth name because that's probably going to convince other people that this event actually happened.
Man.
So it is very aptly named, I think. So.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Is that a coincidence?
I don't know. I'd love to find out who named it.
Gave it that
who
name?
named it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Hiawatha Glacier, right? That it's also the ice is named after. So the crater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So,
but still, it would be interesting to find out who named it. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to go over once more with just quickly though, about the fire dragon. That we have in our legends. So we have it. I found this here is written that among the Algonquin and Iroquois, the myths regarding the fire dragon are at once striking and important. Now, the fire dragon is in fact a personification of the meteor. Flying through the air among the stars, the large meteors appear against a midnight sky like fiery reptiles, sheathed in lambent flames. It is believed of them that they fly from one lake or deep river to another, in the bottom of which they are bound by enchantment to dwell. For should they be permitted to remain on the land, they would set the world on fire. The Iroquois applied their names for the fire dragon light thrower to the line when first seen, thus indicating the conception of the fierceness of the fire dragons. Among the Iroquois, it was the deeds of the fire dragon that hastened the occasion for the metamorphosis of the primal beings.
Wow.
So, as you see, the according to our legends, it was the fire dragon or the meteor that basically wiped out the last, the prime, what's it called, the primal beings.
Yeah.
So
that also reminds me of a little bit. I saw connections there to the rainbow serpent, the Australian indigenous mythologies, and they also say that the rainbow serpent took part in the destruction and creation of the world, and also is kept confined underwater in the intermediate periods where he's not needed, or he's not doing his.
We have, well, it's not that the serpent, the one myth I'm thinking of, we have a rainbow serpent as well. And it was living in the river near Buffalo, New York. And the thunderer killed it, this rainbow serpent, and it floated, and it was poisoning people that were going down to the river to get water because it was living in that water. So the thunderer killed it. And it floated downriver and got caught, and that's what created Niagara Falls. So,
whoa, wow,
yeah. And then we have another legend where it's same thing. It's a rainbow serpent, it's multicolors, and the thunderer captures it and keeps it in a cage, but it keeps escaping. And every day he has to go out and gets it. So some people say what they mean when you see a rainbow, that's the rainbow serpent
has escaped.
Yeah, but actually, I think like in our legends, like the thunderer is actually Hercules, the constellation Hercules, and I think the snake is Hydra, and that Ophiuchus is either the thunderer holding the snake, or David Matheson put it, could be the cage that the snake is in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Ophiuchus, so
I see. Yeah, that could be, you could view it as a snake trapped in a tower or something, a cage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because we, like I said, the thunderers have here on them.
The thunderer, is that what you're saying? That it's like a sky being?
Yeah, it's so he's called Hino, the thunderer. As guardian of the heavens, Hino is entrusted with the thunder, the voice of admonition, which can be heard above the turmoil of the tempests. It is his duty to direct the rain for refreshing the earth. In the planting season, Hino has supervision of the seeds, and in growing time renders beneficent aid in ripening the fruits and maturing the harvest. Hino can assume the form of a human being, and as such, dressed as a warrior, he wears in his hair a magic feather, which renders him invulnerable to the attacks of evil. On these occasions, he is invested with authority to inflict dire punishment upon evildoers, and is dreaded as the avenger of vice. Hino has two assistants, one of whom is half human, the other celestial. To aid them in their terrestrial travels, they have received no names, and so unidentified by sign, they can faithfully serve his secrecy. In the celestial travels, Hino carries on his back a great basket containing boulders of chert rock, which he hurls at evil spirits whenever he discovers them in the sky. Sometimes the evil spirits evade these boulders, and they fall to the earth and enveloped in fire. So the spirit of thunder hates all mysteries. He despises monsters, unclean beasts, and witches. He pursues with relentless fury the myth monsters and strikes them dead with his thunder fire whenever they appear. He hates the creations of witches, such as images made living and witch transformations. The great horned serpents and the underwater people fear him, and often when they attempt to visit the earth world, they are discovered by the vigilant storm clouds who immediately report their movements to Hino. He hates the false faces and also manner of sorcery. So
Wow.
that's
Hates mysteries. He wouldn't like our podcast.
Nope. So I'm going to be surprised the tangent cube of science gets hit by a bolt of lightning.
There's so many symbols in those. They're packed into these
Yeah,
stories.
I
It's
know.
amazing. So what you were when you were telling the going back to the sky woman falling, what are the animal symbols there? The otter, the beaver. Do those have a deeper meaning too? Are they are they also constellations, or do they mean something else?
Well, otter is Leo, I think.
Oh,
And the turtle is Cancer. And that's why if you see I forget the name of the constellation that's right beside it. It's just a little straight line. So we're saying, and then right on the other side of Cancer on the Milky Way is Orion, who's holding a bow, and it also looks like some corn.
okay.
So I think he jumps into the river or into the water, even though there's no water there, to get his arrow, which is right beside Cancer. And then he finds out that the great turtle is his father.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and then after that, I think the twins are represented by Gemini
Yep.
Yeah.
when we're given birth. And then with the good brother does at one point, which also ties in possibly with the cataclysm, is he steals the sun from his grandmother, the sun and the moon. Now, throughout the story, it's talking about daytime, but it's saying there's no sun, or it's not up in the sky, but they have...
It's like the Phaeton story.
Yeah, or like I said, potentially that the sun was blocked out
Yep.
for a while from all the cataclysm that was going on, the volcanoes or whatever else happened. And then he goes with the hare and the fisher, like the fisher cat. So I think the hare is Taurus and the fisher cat is Aries. And then he meets a Dewey, which I think is Cephas. And finally he meets a thunderer, the last one. And his main duty is to water the earth. So that's Aquarius. So that's all. Actually, our creation story starts in Sagittarius, I believe, because the first thing it says, this male man being and female man being live in a lodge. She lives on the south side. He lives on the north side. And every morning she wakes up and she goes and combs his hair. So that's, as David Matheson did with the White Corn Maiden and Deer Hunter story, where Sagittarius is holding the comb, Ophiuchus is a lodge, and the man is Boötes, because he has his back to her. And like I said, then Sky Woman, she crosses the river on a maple log, which is the Milky Way in the dark rift again, to go to see her future husband. And one of the things she has to do is she has to make cornmeal, like corn mush, but she has to do it naked. And while she's not allowed to flinch or do anything, and she's boiling the water and it's splashing all up on her. And so she's basically, at the end, she's covered with this cornmeal. And then he has, the future husband calls his two slaves to come clean her. So he calls in his slaves, and his slaves are two dogs. And they lick the corn mush off of her, and their tongues are so sharp that wherever they lick her, they cut her, and she's bleeding all over the place. And then and once again, she's not allowed to flinch. And then when she gets done, she puts her garments back on. So I think, once again, David Matheson shows that in some cultures, a subservient dog, slave dog, is represented by Scorpio. And then a pool of blood could be that part as well, because that's the widest part of the Milky Way. So I think that's where this story falls in. And then she has to go back to her village, and she uses a basket, a forehead strap basket, that the husband puts meat in, and he shakes it 7 times to get more meat, more food in there as much as possible. So the basket being Libra probably has an odd 7 times as a 7-headed snake that some Scorpio sometimes represents.
Yeah, the Hydra.
Yeah, she goes back to the village. She makes it rain corn, and as well, she goes back to the village. Her husband tells her, when you get back there, you have to take the roofs off your lodges, and I'm going to make it rain grain, basically. So with David, we talked about it. We basically said it's basically like manna.
Yeah,
or
that's what I was thinking too.
It does space ramen.
Space ramen.
Space ramen there in our creation story. And so that's the lodge, of course, being Ophiuchus, and
Ophiuchus.
it shows that it could be holding a piece of manna as well. So there's that, and then she goes back, and then when the fall, of course, Virgo, she looks like she's falling, and her husband is Boötes, and they're almost feet to feet, and this is in our creation story that they only slept feet to feet, and that's why he was surprised that she was pregnant. So that's why I said it was a couple of virgin births in there. So
Yeah, okay, I can see all the connections to the stars in those stories for sure. That is interesting. Do you think that's made clear to people who pursue the mysteries in the elders? Do you think they know this, or
no? That's why I have a lot of support right now for doing what I'm doing, like because I'm writing a book about this, and kind of like the same style that David writes his books.
Yeah.
And I actually have a lot of support from the elders, and one of the knowledge keepers that I'm dealing with the most, Trina Stacy, because that's the one thing that we haven't gotten back yet. We've gone back our languages, we've gone back our dances, we've gone back our ceremonies, our traditions, all these other things we've gotten back that we had lost before. The only thing we haven't got back yet is our connection to the stars. So that's why she's working with elders separately. And every time I meet with her once a week, sometimes every 2 weeks, and she keeps telling me that's what the elders keep saying, is that we need to get our connections back to the stars. But she's not telling them what I'm doing. But
not yet?
Yeah, not yet. So,
man, that's really cool.
That is really cool. Well, let's get into some of the giant stories then. This is what we're here for.
Or we can push it off to the side and not talk about them
Just
at all.
Never talk about giants. I'll put the giants in the title, and we just don't ever talk about them.
Yeah, just like the turtles all the way down one. So.
Well, the stone giants, I found those very interesting. Let's go through some of the stone giant stories. When I first read these years ago, I thought, are they talking about people wearing armor?
I first researched into this after listening to one of your earlier podcasts when you talk about that, about the speech with Abraham Lincoln was preparing about the giants, and they found the giants with copper armor. And that's when I found these legends, where I first read them. And to me, kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the bison, the giant bison, we wouldn't know what a mammoth looks like. We don't know what an elephant looks like. But a bison, it's a good substitute. So I think it's the same thing. We wouldn't really know what metal was.
Right.
So how would we describe it? That all talks the same thing, that it stops arrows. They can't shoot them.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's their way of the hardest thing that they know is stone.
Yeah.
Or that they're familiar with. So I think that's why they're using stone instead of armor.
Right. And if you're walking around in armor and it's not all polished and shiny, it might just look like, like they're covered in rock, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the other point there? He says they rolled them.
They rolled in the
themselves
sand.
Yeah.
Sand. So does that mean, okay, so it's coming from the ground somehow, the ability to do this. So are they finding ore or something like that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's right. Glass armor.
Yeah.
Rolling in sand. But yeah, they're interesting. There's trickster elements in these stories that I found interesting. And then, a lot of times most of the time I guess I shouldn't say most of the time, but going through them, you see that some of the giants are depicted as evil. They're cannibals. They're not honorable in the way they fight. And in other cases, they're so invulnerable that they just don't care. But then there are some giants that are depicted as friendly.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, that was the Turkey one where they're friendly.
Yeah.
But in none of the Iroquois ones are they friendly.
They're right. They're not
Ever.
friendly.
And I think you've mentioned before in other podcasts, like something like, well, just call them cannibals and gives you good reason to create genocide.
That's right.
Yes.
But we, like I said, the Iroquois, we wiped out, I think, approximately 5 tribes, or basically decimated them completely, where they barely survived.
Yeah.
And we had no qualms about it. We just didn't like the look of their face. So,
Didn't call them cannibals. You're just like, yeah, we didn't like it.
No, we wiped
Okay.
them out. Yeah, we did it. That was totally us.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so maybe because of that, there might be some truth to these so-called giants actually being cannibals.
Right. And baby eaters. I mean, you see that in there. They ate children, And so I did. Yeah, you're right. I did wonder in some of those. I was like, is this propaganda? But you're saying like, nope, we don't need propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We take it right. Hey, we're the ones that wiped out the giants, man.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to see.
God dang it, Johns.
Which one? I don't know if you want to go through one particular one or
No, just go through any of them in order. I mean, they were all great. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so these first ones are all from their Tuscarora myths. It's called the invasion of the Runukiig. Like I said, it's Tuscaroran. I don't know how to pronounce Tuscaroran. I just know how to pronounce Mohawk words, so I might be butchering it. For some time after the creation of the first people, a small number of Unguahunwa, or actually in Mohawk, it's called Unguahunwe, which are Indians, dwelled upon Gonawagia, or the St. Lawrence River. Soon their original state of tranquility was disturbed by the invasion of Runukiiki, or great giants, who dwelled in the cold Northland. These invaders were cruel and barbaric, always avoiding a fair fight. Customarily, they either ambush the Unguahunwe warriors or waited until the braves were away from home to plunder their houses, violate their women, and take captives. After each raid, the giants hastily retreated to their home in the frigid north. Eventually, one Yatonia, a courageous young warrior, rid his people of the invaders. He raised a large body of warriors, went forth, and exterminated them. Yanantia had a personal obligation for revenge. Upon one occasion, his sister, the daughter of a chieftain, was abducted by one of the giants and carried to his distant home. The oldest of the sister's 6 brothers went in pursuit, promising if he met no ill fate, he would return home in 7 days. Unfortunately, the sister fell in love with her abductor, and her brother was unable to gain her confidence. Under the guise of friendship, the giant persuaded his brother-in-law to dine with him and spend the night in his home. During the night, the giant violated his trust, slew his guest, and hid the body in a cave. At the end of 7 days, Yanatia, the stout and ferocious young brother, set out to learn of his older brother's fate. The giant likewise greeted him with friendly deception. However, the warrior was suspicious of his brother-in-law. That night, Yanatia slept with some pieces of wood, which produced a faint light over his eyeballs to make it appear he was ever awake. Next day, the young warrior proposed to search for his missing brother, but the giant objected. A struggle between the two followed, and the giant was killed. However, the giant's spirit survived. It fled to heaven and became one of the eastern stars. The bereaved sister was so grief-stricken that she fled into the wilderness and died of despair. Her spirit became one of the northern stars. Yanatia wept over his brother's body and then burned it to ashes. So
That is weird too. The connection with the stars. I mean, like that their spirit survives and goes up into heaven. That's very Egyptian.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
Well,
Hey, you're already drinking a beer? What was that? Was that a Guinness?
yes. Yeah. Quick break.
Is already
I'm totally out of beers.
break time?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and the wood that makes a faint light to keep so that the giant thinks he's awake. Like he puts them over his eyes, so it looks like his eyes are open.
yeah.
Yeah. Just as what, okay. Just to talk about what Kyle just talked about. So here we have Godawas. This is a Seneca version. Godawas dwells in the top of the sky, and with his 4 eyes watches every corner of the earth. At one time, Gadowas was an earth dweller and a hunter, but because of his presuming to celestial power and destroying all the game, he was transferred to the heavens and watches the gate through which each soul passes to immortality. When Gadowas assumed his duty as soul watcher, he removed his hunting belt, which possessed the charm of enticing game, and decorating it with stars casted into space, where it spans the entire heavens and illuminates each path to which he guides a soul.
Wow.
So luminous is this path that its splendid light reaches down to the earth and divides its rays, stationing one at each lodge where a human is dying, that the departing soul may not lose its way as it leaves the dead. No human has ever seen these rays, as they are visible only to the soul. The south wind accompanies the soul till it reaches the gate where Gadowas watches, and as it passes the portal of this journey place, he reaches into space and grasps a star which he fastens in the belt, thereby to guide the soul on its journey. When the soul has crossed the entire heavens, Gadowas removes the star from his belt and returns it to its appointed place. Though each soul may pass through various transmigrations before it departs from its lower existence, it cannot enter the happy hunting ground till it has crossed the star belt of Gadowas. Therefore, the Milky Way to the Indian is a procession of stars, each guiding a soul. If there is a confusion in this procession, it is because some soul is disturbed and out of the path, but the star which never loses its way will search for it and return to its course. So Gadowas is, I believe, Orion.
Yeah.
Because in another myth, we have the four winds, and the south wind is Monoceros in the sky. The west wind is a panther, so that's Leo. The east wind is a moose with giant horns, so that's Taurus. And the bear is in the north. It's obviously Ursa Minor.
Yeah.
And the south one in that thing is Monoceros, which is usually seen as a unicorn, but in ours it's a fawn. And he says here that the southern wind helps him, and the southern Monoceros is right beside Orion. So that's where I drew the connection there. So once again, as well, ancient Egypt and everything.
Yeah, and that bit that you said where the living never see the rays, only the dead can see it, or the souls can see it.
Only the souls can see it.
Yeah, that struck a memory in me too about Barnard's Loop. I don't know. I'll have to look into that on one of the breaks.
Yeah,
light that's not visible to human eyes, but it is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go back with the giants, but I have another one on the evil soul gatherer, who's also in the Milky Way. So next one we have is Otoniarhe, or the stone giants.
Yeah.
For a long time, the Katuno and Tuscaroras were confronted by various kinds of giant man beings. The most formidable of these were the Otoniarhe, or stonish giants. Although the Tuscaroras were the best warriors of all Indians, their arrows would only rattle against the rough and tough bodies of this adversary, and fall at their feet. Thus, the Tuscaroras had to abandon their villages and hide in caves and deep forests for many winters before the fierce invaders were brought into subjugation. The tall, fierce, and cruel giant warriors came from out of the great northern wilderness. They were opposed by many tribes, but all found resistance to be in vain. The giants defeated and overwhelmed the large army sent out against them. Thus, the whole country was put in fear when the people learned of their great strength and that they devoured men, women, and children. The Shawnees thought that the giants were descended from the branch of the sixth family of the Unguhumwe, which passed over the Mississippi River on a grapevine and were separated from their kinsmen on the east bank when the vine broke. Without the guidance of Taran Yawego, they wandered to the northwest, much as vagrants without any knowledge of the arts of life. They forgot the rules of humility and began to eat their game in the raw flesh, leading them to become cannibals. They rolled their bodies in the sand to make their skins tough and impregnable to the arrows of their enemies. One day, a Tuscarora warrior discovered how this was done. He saw a stone giant hardening his skin while having a delightful time sliding down a sandy riverbank into the water. During this time of great distress, the Tuscaroras prayed to Taranyawagan, sending their words and minds to him upon the smoke of native tobacco. The holder of the heavens observed them in their helpless state and determined to help them. To do so, he took the form of a stone giant and joined the invading warriors. Brandishing his heavy war club, he led them away from the country of the Tuscaroras under the pretense of finding and bringing destruction to the 5 nations of the Iroquois. Taranyawago and the giants had traveled far and were weary late one day as they neared the strong fort at Onondaga. So he told his followers to lay at the foot of a mountain to rest during the night. They would be fresh and better prepared for the attack the next day, he explained. But next morning, as day began to break, the holder of the heavens ascended to the top of the mountain and cast down a vast mass of rocks upon the slumberers. All the giants except one was killed, and this one fled toward the north, carrying the news of the destruction of his fellow warriors. The Senecas say that a party of the warriors engaged the stone giants near a great precipice, and the benevolent god of the west wind interceded in their behalf by blowing all the giants into the abyss.
So, do you think they could be talking about armored animals? Like, again, I'm thinking of, since they're buried by a cataclysm, basically a destruction, I'm wondering is it possible that, again, we're talking about the Younger Dryas thing, and these are the giant animals, and I don't know. What do you think? It does call them man beings, so that doesn't seem like it's...
Yeah. But then again, in some of the, like in the creation story, all things are called man beings.
Okay.
So, but that's usually just in the sky world, where they're called man beings, like the wind man being and the deer man being.
Okay.
But
yeah, if you take the story literally, I'm like, somewhere there's a whole bunch of giants buried under an avalanche. We should go find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I read, I don't think I put it in here, but I had it in, I did see it somewhere else in another story that when, I don't know if you guys ever heard about the Cardiff giant.
Yes, I did. Yep.
When that was around Onondaga, where,
Oh.
well, I mean, it turned out to be a hoax, but I mean.
Yeah, it was a hoax, yeah.
They said when it first came out that none of the Iroquois were surprised.
There you go.
So.
Wow.
So the part I found interesting in that story too was that it's according to the legend, they're basically a branch of, like, in other words, you all came from the same ancestors. In other words, they're saying that it was like a branch of the people that just went rogue. And how did they become giants then? That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part they don't mention, but it plays again, as I said earlier, when we're talking about where the Iroquois came from and getting to the Mississippi. So
yeah,
we're talking about that time when we're after the cataclysm and the floodwaters have gone and we're repopulating North America. And somehow this one branch or whatever with this one group got separated and went their own way or something.
Yeah, it said they crossed the river on a vine.
Vine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that sounds like another sort of introducing some star mythology in there, right?
It does.
Giving them the river that they cross and the vine, and then the vine's broken, or so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that one yet in the stars, but I'm not even going to attempt it right now.
Right. Yeah, and I also, it's interesting that if we're thinking about this as being people with the ability to make armor of some kind, and yet the story is telling you that basically what happened is they regressed into, they basically forgot how to cook their game, so it's weird. It's like, how did they, lose their civilization and yet still retain the ability to make metal? I don't know. That is an interesting concept there.
Yeah, like I said, I was when I first read it, I'm like that's what I said. I automatically think that it's like I'm trying to take legends, all these stories, and figure out when did they happen?
Yeah.
Where, like I said, where are we in North America at this point? Right. Is it very early? Is it very late? Is it more of a parable type story? Mm-hmm. But it has something in there, kind of like I said, the creation story, kind of shows that the cataclysm is in there.
Yeah.
And the extinction event, and so all these other things. So, what kind of story is this, or is it just like one to teach, about morality or something else like that?
Right.
That's kind of
Is there real history mixed in with a moral tale?
Or is it just completely made up? Yeah. Or I don't know. That's what I'd say. It's like I think some of them are real, obviously, are talking about real things that happen. Yeah. And then some of the other ones, they're talking about like, the hunter in the sky, obviously. So they're talking celestial.
Yes. Well, it's if something, let's say they did encounter actual giants at some point, then it makes sense that they'd create, fictional stories about them as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If they never encounter them at all, then why should there be a whole bunch of stories about them, right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
It just seems a lot more likely that you would end up with a bunch of giant stories if at least at some point they had actually
Encountered giants.
encountered them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, same. Yeah, because so like some of the other giant, not just giant myths, some of the other myths are actually talking about real events and just put it into parable form or exaggerated.
Right.
I'd say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
or like a. No, go ahead.
In the stone giant story, it doesn't tell you exactly how big they were, but some of the other ones that we're going to be getting to in the next segment, we're talking about huge beings. So
Yeah, half as tall as the tallest tree.
right, yeah,
Or another one says 20 feet tall.
right.
There's another one. So,
They crossbred with Sam Squanches
yeah.
when they
Maybe
crossed
that's
the
what they
river.
are.
All right, let's take another break and we'll come back.
And continuing on here with Native American legends of creation and giants
Giants.
with Kyle Delisle from Canada. And yeah, man, this is great stuff. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with us. And make sure to share some super secret esoteric stuff that you're not allowed to share. That would be awesome.
So we're going to continue on with giants.
Yes.
Okay. The next one is called the Wicked Giant's Death. The Tuscaroras remembered one giant for his treachery and wickedness. He grew up among ordinary people and was thought to be harmless enough. When grown, the giant stood about 20 feet tall
Yeah.
and was able to carry bears in his girdle like the ordinary hunter would carry squirrels. Yet no one was afraid of him, and he always joined the men in their hunting parties. After a year or two, a man or two of each hunting party would disappear, and their bones showed that their flesh had been partly cooked. Thus, they could not have fallen victim to wild beasts. The giant was suspected, and spies were appointed to trail him, whereupon he was seen to calmly kill one of his companions and eat him. So the giant was secretly condemned to death, and it was agreed that he should be made a victim of trickery. The giant was invited to a feast nearby a slough of quicksands and clay. Poles were cut on one side and laid with the cuts downwards and hidden from view across the morass as a bridge. At the end of the feast, when the giant was heavy and unwieldy from eating, two athletic and intrepid warriors attacked him with their clubs and fled across the bridge. The giant gave pursuit, and the poles forming the bridge gave way under his great weight, trapping him in the quagmire. Now he was helpless, and the assailants returned with the war clubs and beat him in the head until he was dead. At the end, it says, storytellers say that this giant was of the tortoise gen. I'm not sure what they mean by that.
The turtle again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the trick there. Make the trap. The bridge that'll only break under the giant and not the warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just beat him upside the head until he dies. So.
Right. And again, of course, I always think if this is a bog or something they did it, then he's probably still down there.
Yeah. Send out a search party.
Yeah.
All right, here's another one. It says, some giants possessed utke, or magical power, much as the giant reptiles. In some tales noted, sorcerers assisted in the courageous and experienced warriors, as is illustrated in the following story recorded by J.N.B. Hewitt in 1888.
Can we stop for a second?
Yeah.
What does that mean? They possess magical powers like the giant serpents. Like, what is that?
Giant reptiles.
Yeah, giant reptiles.
I'm wondering, or I'm just guessing right here, because as we read about the Thunderer,
Yeah.
how he hates magic, and he mentions the horned serpents.
Mm-hmm.
So possibly, not to get too far into it, basically on another legend that I have is that the horned serpents live underground, and the thunderer and his assistants make sure that they stay underground. If they come above ground, they throw lightning bolts at it to kill them or to get them back underground. And he says at one point, the thunderer is going to tell us to stop. And once these snakes are allowed to come above ground and roam the world, they will destroy the world.
That kind of, I mean, like just going with cataclysmic analogies, that sounds like could be volcanism, right?
Yeah. I haven't figured that out.
The horned serpent is the volcano. It's got the big horn is sticking out of the ground, and then of course when the serpent actually comes up, then the lightning is sitting there trying to drive it back underground.
Oh yeah,
right. There's this giant cloud above it. There's this huge lightning storm above it trying to drive it back underground, and of course if it's let go,
that's good.
The world would be destroyed. So I don't know.
Wow, that is good.
Yeah.
So what's the word that they use there that it just translates to magical power? What was that word again? It said they have.
Oh, this in Tuscarora, it looks like Yutki.
Yeah.
But in Mohawk, it's called Utkun.
Okay.
And that's the evil magical power. It's
Okay.
Utkun.
All right.
So that's why I say the sorcerers usually are filled with Utkun or.
Yeah. And
stuff like that.
does it mean specifically like the ability to to change nature with a thought? I mean, what does it mean by magical power? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, no. Something I have to research some more.
Yeah, because I'm interested to know what they, what the concept
What
is.
they consider magic.
Yeah, what are they? What can they do? That is what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's fine. We can continue on with the story.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I have something right off. No, I don't have anything on it.
That's fine.
Okay.
Future podcast.
Yeah. Some people who had made an encampment were beset by famine and were driven to such straits that they were obligated to live upon the acorns, which they prepared as follows. The acorns were placed in lye so as to extract the bitter or brackish principle from them. Then they were taken to a running stream and thoroughly washed as to free them from the lye. And to do this more thoroughly, the baskets were left in the stream of water. Eventually, it was noticed that these baskets were taken out of the water and cast away, so that in the morning when they went to get the acorns, they found that the baskets had been thrown away and that nothing but the shucks were left of the acorns. So one evening, a number of brave men were chosen to lie in ambush around the baskets to ascertain what it was that had been robbing them of their food. This ambush was formed by a large number of the most courageous and experienced warriors, and among them were many noted sorcerers. After waiting a long time, they finally heard the crackling of fallen sticks and branches in the forest, as if some gigantic animal was approaching, but the sound stopped a distance from them. At last, they saw a hand come down from above, and they looked and saw a giantess who was half as tall as the tallest tree bending over. She took up a basket from the water, poured the acorns into her mouth, and cast the basket away. Then, shooting in unison, the men in ambush let go their arrows at the giantess, succeeding in killing her. The giantess had also killed and eaten many of the people as they went forth to hunt. After killing her, they individually took from her small portions of flesh as a medicine or charm against whatever may be matched against them in after times.
Yeah, now that's an interesting one.
I'm surprised about the method of dealing with the acorns, like soaking them in lye and then washing them, like brining, or it's similar to the way you deal with hominy or olives, for example. Like you soak them in the water to leach out all the tannins and stuff.
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as I mentioned, they're in a famine, so they're basically
having to eat acorns. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all they have left to eat is acorns. And there's actually another. It was on ancientorigins.net. I think I saw the story about the Adirondacks. Where it got its name. Adirondacks is actually a Mohawk word, and it was the name of a tribe that we basically called them bark eaters because they didn't do agriculture. So we said they basically ate the bark off of trees. So that's why Adirondacks is this name.
It means bark eaters.
Bark eaters.
That's
yeah.
great. I love that.
Bunch of bark eaters.
Yeah, some other Mohawk words in common use is Canada, which the Mohawk is Ganada, which means small village. Ohio is a Mohawk word. Ontario is a Mohawk word. So
Wow. So going back to the giantess, it doesn't specifically say why they thought it was female, but they hear it walking up, but they don't see anything, implying that she's so big she can stop far enough away to where they don't see her feet and then reach down. All they see is a hand coming down out of the sky to grab the baskets.
Yeah, they only see her when she's bending over.
Right.
She bends down to get to grab the baskets. They only see her then. So
yeah, that's wild.
Okay, we have this other one. It's just called Various Monstrous Peoples. And this was written down by Father Lafitau. There's like 2 books we have from this Father Lafitau. And he wrote this down in 1724. So he's one of the earliest Europeans to actually document some of the native people and how they lived at that time and their stories and everything else like that. And it's really interesting to read because he keeps comparing us to the Greeks. He's saying like, all their legends are similar to the Greek mythologies and everything. So here it says, Jacques Cartier, who probably never read, this is a Greek name, Steisias, Ctesias or Pliny? Is it Pliny or Pliny?
Pliny.
Yeah.
Pliny tells us on an Indian's report that there were, towards the north, people who did not eat at all, people who had only one leg, and others in whom one saw things so prodigious that the mere account of them would take too long. That same Indian woman of whom I spoke just now when I was talking of the pygmies told us in the same way that, besides little men, there were others of a prodigious height and stoutness who gave their excrement through the mouth and urinated under the shoulder. Some who had only one thigh, one leg, and a very wide foot, 2 hands on the same arm, the head and body flat, the nose, eyes, and mouth very small, who were, in spite of all that, the best divers in the world, and that the Eskimos who used their captives to get from the sea the spoils of the shipwrecks of European vessels. Finally, other had extraordinarily black faces, very heavy noses and lips, and hair white from birth, like the fur of animals in polar regions.
Wow.
See, I don't know. That description, I just immediately think of a machine, like a drone or something, right? Because you think of a machine and try to describe it in human body parts.
Yeah.
How many legs does it have, or where's its mouth? You see what I'm saying? Like a one-legged person that has an arm that has 2 hands.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm thinking it's some kind of drone type of machine.
It does sound like a machine.
Submersible, it's sort of like, it's got 1 eye. It's the camera.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and it's the best diver, so they use it to, get treasure off of shipwrecks.
Yeah.
It can go way down there and doesn't need air. And excretes, the excrement from the mouth. It's like, I don't know. It just sounds like a machine.
Yeah. Or, as you spoke earlier, he happened to be talking to one of our Johnsons and they just screwed up the story. Damn it, Johnson. That's not how the story goes. You know that.
It had like 2 hands on the same arm. And
not the best storyteller, that old John.
Who'd you talk to? Where'd you get that story from? Johnson? Oh, jeez. Let me set you straight.
Yeah. Johnson was just saying, those guys up there, they talk shit. And then it turns into they shit from their mouths. Right. But yeah, there are stories of the little people too. Have you looked into those yet? Have you started your collection of the other?
I haven't documented in detail, or actually at all at this point.
Yeah.
But that's fairly common knowledge, at least amongst, like, when I grew up, we always knew about that.
Yeah.
My great grandmother told me she saw one.
Oh, wow.
When she was younger, she saw one, and there's a lot of stories of them just in Ganawage, not necessarily just in across North America or before the settlers were here or anything. So there's still stories of that. There's still an urban legend in Ganawage of a giant named Tardiawago. It's the same name as from the creation story, the Good Brother, and he's told we have a tunnel here in Ganawage, and I think it was my great grandfather said he saw him, and he was leaning up against the tunnel, so he would be 20 feet high maybe. Wow! And there's even a painting of him leaning on our church steeple, or the Catholic church we have here in Ganawage, of the giant leaning on the steeple and everything. So that's an urban legend that I haven't heard or seen anywhere else in the Iroquois myths, but it's something within Ganawage that, like I said, it's an urban legend.
Yeah.
So, we also have like a monkey dog and other things like that people said they have seen. So a monkey dog has the body of a dog and the face of a monkey. So.
Wow.
A donkey.
There you go.
A what?
It's a donkey.
Yeah, so it's obviously a donkey. So is the giant in the urban legend? Is he? Is it like a hairy giant, like a Sasquatch type of thing, or is it just looks?
From
like
what I heard, no, it's just like a regular man.
Huh?
Just
20 feet tall.
Yeah, just 20 feet tall, and he smokes a pipe. That's what I can recall. My great grandmother telling me. Because I think it was her husband that saw it, and he was walking, and he looked up, and he didn't notice him at first. And he got surprised by it, and
Wow!
He just skidded out of the way and kept walking.
Wow!
So there's that. So I haven't found anything necessarily written down about it. So just from what I've heard myself. So
Man, that's cool.
All right, now this is a bit of a long one. From The Legend of the Longhouse by J.J. Cornplanter. And so this is written from the Tonawanda Reservation, November 14th, 1936. So it's a letter. My dear Sanawe, I will tell you the legend about the stone giants that used to roam about in this section and would devour people. You spoke of them the other day. I will relate the legend some writers have written about. As usual, this is my father's way of telling it. Long time ago, when this country was new, when there was all sorts of hideous beasts and monsters to be found in the great woods and forest, in those days, many things used to happen that would scare people. Many of them were caught and killed by some of these man-killing things that were common. Once again, possibly talking about the animals from the extinction event.
Yeah.
Short-faced cave bear and stuff like that. There are all sorts of strange incidents told by the people who travel from one village to another. It was their fireside tales that the children were taught. They gained their knowledge this way when still very small. Such was my training also in my boyhood days. In one of the numerous villages lived a certain young man. He was a type that bragged about himself, that he was fearless and did not take much stock from other people's stories about what happened here or there. So basically our version of a skeptard.
Yeah.
He always said he would have to see it first before he would believe. And that if he saw any of the subjects mentioned as the ones to cause scare or whatever it happened to be, he used to say that he would kill whatever it was, even do it by his bare hands. Such was the way this youth carried on, and everyone knew that he was talking without thinking about what it may mean in reality. His name was Skanunwonti, meaning other side of the ripples or rapids. He delighted in idle boasting. He boasted that he would either subdue or bitter kill the Genot squad that he ever met. Now it seems at this time the Genonunskwa, or stone giants, were the most feared of all the man-killing beasts or beings that were common then. They are called stone giants because their coats were of stone, and no kind of arrow nor spears were effective. They were very big and powerful, and were cannibals in habit. They loved to eat human flesh, especially fond of little children. Their Seneca name for this strange, cruel giants is Gononskwa. The translation is lost, so we don't know what the actual translation is. Now, moreover, these powerful beings could hear any person who happens to talk about them. regardless who or where it may be. So they knew Skanawundi and his idle boasting, and were only waiting the chance to prove or test him of his courage. One day, a female Gununutskwa volunteered to try this braggart. She found him walking along the riverbank as unconcerned and as happy as can be. She was on the opposite side of the river, so she called, Skananunkwi. It has always been your boast to either subdue or kill any Ganunskwa that you ever met. Is that true? Poor Skanawundi was scared almost helpless as he turned around and saw this great big image of a solid rock in human form standing just across the river from where he was walking. But just like his boasting, he thought a good joke would be played on this big man-eater. Anyway, he was a careless young man, so he bravely answered, "Yes, it is true, I can do it. Come on over here." Then the bold and brave Ganunskwa immediately started to cross the river, which was very deep. She went to the very bottom as she was very heavy due to her stone garment. As she disappeared into the water, Skanawundi started to hurry and ran upstream where it was shallow water and wade across to the other side. As he did so, he forgot his tomahawk on a big rock where it was before. When the Ganunskwa came up on the bank, she looked and was surprised to find Skanawundi across the river. He called her over and said, "Here I am, come on over." She did not know what to do. She happened to look on the big rock beside her, and she found his tomahawk laying on top of the rock. She picked it up and started to look it over, then said, just look at his weapon that he fights with. How would he do with it? And she touched her mouth with her finger as if to feel the edge of the tomahawk, then brought it down lightly and struck the big rock as if to split it. And behold, the big rock split in two. She was so surprised that she shook with fright, and she begged of him to spare her life. She said, "Please let me live, and I promise you that I will never harm you or your people anymore. I will also tell all the rest of my people to do likewise, and we will leave this country and go out west, where we will never be seen again. Our deeds of the past will only be as legends in the future. You are indeed more powerful than we are, and could easily destroy us if you so desire without any effort. Furthermore, I will make terms with you. So in the future, you will be known as the most bravest man alive and will be able to do wonders in the days to come, if you only permit me to live and not kill me as you intended." Now, she did not realize that it was herself that made the tomahawk very powerful, because she did touch it with her own saliva, thereby giving it her power. Then did Skanawundi feel very brave and important. He told her thus, "I will let you go, providing you carry out everything you said, as I have a mind to destroy you and all your kind for all the evil you have done towards my people. But I will take you at your word, because if I find that you have deceived me in the least, I can easily locate you and all your kind, so beware. It is said that the last of the Gununskwa, they never have been seen since that day."
It's such a strange story. I'm sorry, is it not over?
No. But I need a break anyway, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's just interesting because it's like, when I'm listening to it, I'm like, well, she becomes terrified because of the weapon, but she's holding it. So I don't understand, like, what happened there.
I think it's because, well, first of all, like I said, and I read this in a couple of other legends similar to this, where when she puts it to her mouth or licks her finger and touches it, so her saliva is what gives it power.
Yeah.
So I figured if he has another weapon like that.
Yeah, she's afraid that it'll cut through her armor, right? I did get that. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one specifically says it's armor. It's a garment.
Right, it's a garment she's
wearing.
Makes it clear that it's a garment. Yeah. And so I love that she tries to cross the river and has to walk along the bottom because her armor is so heavy. That's that, and he crosses in a shallow area and she gets out. And he's like, "Hey, I'm over here." What an asshole.
Well, I think there's another one. I'd have to find that one where he keeps going back and forth.
Right.
And eventually the giant drowns or something like that.
Right. So. Yeah. He just keeps crossing.
It is an unusual story because at the beginning you expect him to get his ass kicked, right? You're like, he's all boastful and all this stuff, but he ends up winning.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you sure this is the moral that you want to be teaching to the children?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the idle, boastful guy who somehow becomes the superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah. He basically derped his way out of it.
That's right.
That's the Native American word for scripturp is skanawunti.
Yeah. We'll see what I can do to make that happen.
Yeah, it is a good story, and yeah, there's other versions of the stone giants being destroyed by the avalanche, or I think I read one that you had where they go down into a ravine and get covered, but in this one, he basically terrifies them and they move west. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, to go west.
Yeah.
Never to be seen again.
Yeah. We have this other, well, I'll just continue on. So it came about just because this young man could brag and could carry a joke farther than anyone else. Really, at heart, he was not as brave nor bold as he pretended to be. To this day, when anyone makes idle talks or brags about oneself, the people just laugh and point at the party saying, Skanawunti is back. This is another back. Yeah. So it's basically the same way as saying, you're just skirp derping.
Yeah. Just be a skirp tart over there, Johnson.
This is another legend about the same mythical beings. It would seem that this strong and fierce race of stone giants had very bad feelings toward the Senecas and always wanted to war on them. But somehow the Senecas were always successful in finding some means of protection from this continued warfare. This one story deals about the time when the great chief of all the Kununskwa decided to put an end to this tribe. He gathered all available men and started on a great march to the land of the Senecas. It seemed that the country of this great, fierce, warlike giants was in the great North Country. So on this day, they came all prepared to wipe out forever this tribe of Senecas. On their way, they had to pass through a long, deep ravine. While they were going along within the deep ravine, they started to sing their marching war song. The Great Spirit looked down and saw what was about to happen to his own people, the Senecas. Then he had compassion and called on the spirit of the wind to stop the march of these giants by causing strong wind to blow on this big group of beings. The land of the stone giants were in the frozen country, and just south of that, it was all rocky and full of deep ravines. It was in this country of ravines that these strong warlike giants were marching, singing their war song, intent on taking the Senecas unaware and exterminating them entirely. So the spirit of the west wind, he, the master and supreme of all wind spirits, heeded the call of the Great Spirit, and the wind did blow as no wind has ever been blown before. It was later, in brackets, it was later termed the flying head. It blew so hard that it scraped the surface of the earth and rocks, leveling off hills and mountains as it went along. It came on until it reached a certain ravine where these stone giants were then marching. With all its fury, it blew so hard that the sides of this ravine caved in. First, it started by taking off the tops of this big ravine and throwing the rocks into the ravine and burying the stone giants alive. On it came in its work of destruction. It leveled off everything in its path. Gradually, the song of defiance and of war of these stone giants grew less and less until after a while it was all quiet. There was no sign of the stone giants, and the force of the wind died down. Then the Great Spirit was satisfied because he loved his Seneca children. So today we have amongst our masks long-haired, weird faces to show remembrance of the wind spirit and of the stone giants who did not accomplish their intention to destroy my people. So I hope you will all be pleased of this legend as I tell it. It is a very old legend.
Yeah.
Wow, that one does sound like cataclysm, like the scraping of the earth and burying the giants. I mean,
knocking tops of mountains off. And,
wow.
Yeah. And then they have the long-haired face masks. Broomstar,
Man, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think what he's talking at the end there are the, we call the Hadui, the false faces. I don't know if you've ever seen them. You can Google them, the false face masks that we make from trees that have magical power. And one of them, at least according to this story, and actually the next one as well, talks how some of these faces are meant to represent the stone giants.
Oh. Wow.
Should we look that up? False faces?
False face masks.
Yeah. Go ahead. See what you find.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh, wow. Yep. This is
false face.
Iroquois false face mask. Yeah.
Yep. So this is from a book called The False Faces of the Iroquois. and this one for stone giants. The relevant attributes of these beings are stone or flint-covered bodies, gigantic stature, cannibalism, and a heart of quartz or ice crystal. Secondary features comprise transformation to human form, a spear-shaped finger for extracting livers of victims, a detached finger that magically points to human game, and a magical cane or staff that also serves as a weapon, as a sensing device and tracking, and can be projected and transformed into bridges and other works. Such stone beings inhabit the north or dwell in caves or mountains. They profess and are believed to have preceded humans on earth and require special treatment to nullify their powers lest they destroy humans and the sources of sustenance left on earth by the Creator for human use and enjoyment.
I don't know.
Require special treatment.
Yeah, and that they preceded humans.
Yeah, they precede humans, and they will consume everything on the planet if they're not kept in check. That does sound familiar.
What?
I mean, that sounds like, Sitchin stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Talking about the reason for the destruction of the world was to get rid of these beings that were consuming everything on the earth.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, the giants.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of these
Yeah, that's right.
a lot of these stories are very similar, found around the world, just
Yeah.
told differently.
Right.
That's one of the things I was discussing with David in their video, was that as I was reading the creation story, at one part, I thought it become Christianized because it talks about the good brother exchanging the ribs between the man and the woman because they weren't showing affection to each other. And so he exchanged the ribs, and then they showed affection after that. So I thought that might have been Christianized, but when I thought about it some more, is like, well, is this just a common theme? Because they exchange ribs in the biblical, God takes a rib from Adam
Yeah.
and puts it into Eve. This one, they exchange the ribs. So, yeah, David said Christians wouldn't see the stories as the same. So it's just, like I said, another story that
has a connection
found
there.
all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the biblical narrative has the giants coming from the sons of God who came down and took the daughters of men
Yep.
to be their wives,
Yeah.
and then the giants devoured the earth,
Yeah.
like you were saying.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so I got one more, and this isn't actually from the Iroquois, it's from the Cherokees. Just because what I was looking for was, I was trying to see if we had any books in our cultural center on other tribes and their stories. The only one we had was the Cherokee. All the rest were all Iroquois. Because I was trying to see if there's any of the stories that pointed to maybe the ones in the mounds that were found in the mountains supposedly, and all that. So and all of ours came from up north. So I want to see if a southern tribe had something similar.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is called the Giants from the West. James Wafford of the Western Cherokee, who was born in Georgia in 1806, says that his grandmother, who must have been born about the middle of the last century, told him that she had heard from the old people that long before her time, a party of giants had come once to visit the Cherokee. They were nearly twice as tall as common men and had their eyes set slanting in their heads, so that the Cherokee called them the slant-eyed people. This is James Mooney, not me, so don't cancel us. They said that these giants lived very far away in the direction in which the sun goes down. The Cherokee received them as friends, and they stayed some time and then returned to their home in the west.
Yeah. So that's a friendly story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
only one.
interesting too, because the previous story, when they drove them, well, like with the female and the river and the guy
they go west.
Wunti,
Oh, yeah,
they all go to the west, and then they're never seen again.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and I love how it's like, this story came from my grandmother, and she said it was a very ancient story that was long before she was born, and you're just like, okay, I just wish there was a way to tell how old these stories are. It's tough to know.
Yeah. No, and that's what I said. Like, if the creation story must be a very old story if they're able to remember the cataclysm.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So some ways you can kind of date it by if they're giving you landmarks, like specifically, like we were next to this river, and you know that they reached that area at a certain time, so it can't be older than however, like whenever they reach that area. But sometimes in some of these stories, there's just no geographical indication of where it was, except the one you just told previously, where the giants come from the frozen north. But which frozen north are we talking about there? Like we were talking in one of the breaks, like could it be the Rockies that they were coming out of,
or were they coming from? Was it still the ice sheet?
Right. Yeah.
During the last ice age that the story is coming from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's cool stuff.
Yep.
All right. Well,
that's
what the last thing I was going to ask you, and you had briefly mentioned it, was what do you think about the stories of giant skeletons being unearthed in the mounds in the Americas?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why. As I mentioned earlier, once I heard it on your guys' earlier podcast, then I went out, and that's why I researched all these stories to say, okay, well, and the fact that they had copper armor and everything. There's some images, and there's all the newspaper accounts.
Yep.
Of these giants, and like I said, even Abraham Lincoln was putting it into his speech about the giants.
Yes.
So, if Abraham Lincoln is even talking about it, it seems to be like a pretty well-known fact.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, when the Cardiff giant first came out, like none of the Iroquois people were surprised by that.
Right.
So that's what I think. I think it's now, how long ago did they exist? And as you mentioned, like in the mounds are usually at the very bottom.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's other layers on top. So
they could have already been in the stone,
Yep.
Yeah, and especially like we're saying, they preceded humans. So did they kind of like with the older megalithic stuff, structures in South America, where the Inca built on top of?
Yeah.
So was that already there when they got to that area?
Right.
Was he already buried? Was he already dead? And then they just came up with a story for it. So
Yes.
Have you looked into Lovelock Cave and the Native American legends about the red-headed giants?
no, actually, I was trying to go when I was going through these stories. I was specifically looking for any mention of like fiery hair or something like that. But I couldn't find anything. So, but like I said, maybe if we look at the ones of some of the tribes that were more south, like with the Cherokees and those along the Mississippi River Valley, they might have more stories about it. So
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like there were different groups. The difference between the stone giants who were cannibals and terrible versus the ones in the Cherokee story who come from the west or come up from the south and are kind of friendly.
yeah, and in Mohawk, the tribe that we called the giants was Rononguetawinia. So that was the name for the tribe of the giants. So if you had a name for it, then
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, really cool stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this with us. Yeah, man, that's would love to keep up with your research as you dig and uncover more stuff.
yeah,
And,
just send me in a direction and find it.
There you go.
Little People's next.
All right.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah.
That would be a good one. So will you stick around and do a Patreon segment with us?
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Excellent. All right. Well, you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. It's got all the podcast-related stuff on there, including the encyclopedia and the glossary, the merchandise store, which we call the Snakeskins. And also, if you want to join the Pyramid Scheme and get on the Patreon, there are links to the Patreon there and to the PayPal if you want to do a one-time donation. But it's just Brothers of the Serpent, or patreon.com/Brothers of the Serpent. And give us reviews, share the shows wherever you can. There's a Facebook group. You can join that, or you can join the Discord, where there's a lot of discussion going on all the time in the Discord. So hop in there if you want to. There's a link to that on the website as well. Thanks to Jeff, who runs the Discord, and to History Shift, who makes all of our YouTube videos. Yeah, seriously, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, you put in tons and tons of work. Over 200 shows put on YouTube, so we really appreciate that. And Yeah. Also, thanks to Soraya from Where Did the Road Go, and Ben from Uncharted X, and all of you snakes out there. We love you guys.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.
There we go.